Welcome to week 3 of organizational behavior and ethics. It felt like as I was doing the grading this week that everyone was starting to get into the groove of the course and understand what's required. And there was some good discussion that went on. Thanks a lot to the first week's facilitators, Christina and Kathy and Kyle, for assisting with those discussions. I wanted to make just a couple of comments. One on values. The Hofstede framework was a framework about values. It's only one of the ones discussed in the text. Make sure before you write your paper in week 5 that you're paying attention to other ways of determining your values, because the ability to discuss your values and the values of your company and the values of the people you work with is going to be a part of that paper. One of the values frameworks that isn't discussed in the book that you might want to think about as you're writing your paper is the one on generational values. I'm sure you've heard people talk about the differences that millennials are bringing into the workplace. That has to do with the difference of values. I'll post an article for this week, not that's required reading, but that will assist you with looking into generational values if that's something that's important in your workplace. I also wanted to mention the discussion on social responsibility and ethics. I thought that was a good discussion. I think Salesforce is and Benioff, that's really a company to watch. I wouldn't be at all surprised, but within a few years it's going to be one of the case studies included in textbooks like ours. Lots of good stuff going on with Salesforce. I did want to mention to those of you, particularly in nonprofits or faith-based institutions, be careful with confusing an organization's mission and its social responsibility. A mission is what the organization was created to do, to provide some kind of service, to provide some kind of product. Oftentimes in nonprofits that are working within local community and providing a service, that's confused with social responsibility. It is a social responsibility, but that's not the organization's social responsibility. That's their mission. Ask yourself how well they are mindful of the global community in terms of pollution, in terms of recycling. Think about all of the stakeholders. Oftentimes, nonprofits expect quite a bit from their employees and believe that the mission itself and doing good through that service is enough to sustain them, when in fact they may be severely underpaid and not able to continue the hard work that's expected of them because they burn out and there's high turnover. So think about that if you're a nonprofit. Are you socially responsible just because you're doing a good job with your mission? Not necessarily. Think that through a little bit more deeply before you write your papers. This week we are talking about, what are we talking about this week? We're talking about the moral person and the moral manager. Primarily the week is about decision making, not just ethical decision making, but utilizing the decision-making frameworks in Chapter 5 of your Robinson Judge text. Read about those, take the self-assessments, and in your response to the first forum for the week, talk about how errors and biases may get in the way of decision-making, yours and others within your organization. Some really interesting stuff there, I think, in terms of those errors. We've been talking about biases, so this is kind of a natural outflow. You should learn quite a bit about your own decision-making this week. The second forum is about the Moral Person, Moral Manager article. I hope that you get into that article, particularly that grid, and use it as a way to analyze the decision-making that goes on by the leadership in your organization, and then go to Chapter 6 in Farrell, Friedrich, and Farrell and look at the historical moral philosophies and how they fit in with the moral person, moral manager. The historical moral philosophy of virtue certainly fits in with the moral person side, and the teleological and deontological frameworks fit in with the moral manager on the decision-making side. Make sure that you're clear about those as you read Chapter 6 in Farrell, Friedrich, and Farrell. Your PAJ this week then takes the second form and turns it on you as the individual rather than the leadership in your organization. Apply those frameworks and discuss your own ethical approach to your day-to-day business practices. I think I don't have a lot more to say. This week's discussion leaders are Noemi, Brian, and Simon. I look forward to the discussion as it unfolds, and once again, please don't hesitate to set up a phone conversation or just enter into an email exchange with me if you need clarity or want to talk further about the course. Have a great week.